Quarterback reclamation projects all around the league from the 2021 and 2022 drafts. The latest, Justin Fields traded from the Chicago Bears to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and a whole lot more coming up on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look into the NFL on the field and in the front office. With elite breakdowns, next-level analysis, and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We love all the everydayers, and we love everyone who subscribes up on YouTube. Hit the notification bell, and, of course, you can find us everywhere you find your podcasts every single day. This episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first ticket purchase. All right, this is one that I got right, finally, Matt. My quarterback carousel projections earlier in the offseason, it was looking pretty rugged, but the Kenny Pickett trade out of Pittsburgh opened the door for me to hit on one, and that was Justin Fields to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I love the fit. Apparently Justin Fields loved the fit, because we're finding out now, according to reports from Ian Rappaport, Matt, that there was 4 other teams that did put in an offer for Justin Fields. So it wasn't that he was so unliked around the league that all the Bears could get was a future 6th round conditional draft pick. This was, they wanted to do right by him and send him to the place of his choice, the best landing spot, which in this case was the Pittsburgh Steelers. More on that in a second. But I also don't know, if it's not like someone's beating down the door with a 2nd round pick with those other teams either.
Right.
So it was probably just a little bit more, but there was some interest at least. And, teams we had talked about, like the Ravens, maybe the Eagles, who actually traded for Kenny Pickett instead, might have been teams that, saw a good fit as a backup quarterback in Justin Fields. So my question to you to start this all off, is Justin Fields a backup quarterback or potentially more for the Pittsburgh Steelers either now or later?
It's a really interesting move, and I fully put my Steelers stamp of approval on it for a future 6 that could turn into a 4th if he plays over 50% of the snaps, which, hey, Wilson could get hurt in the first game and he could play over 50% of the snaps. But still, it's not much to give up. The compensation's the beauty of it, though, and 5th-year options are due, you got to say yay or nay by March 2nd. So you have a long time on that. But I don't think there's any way they pick it up. It's like $25 million, give or take.
May 2nd. You said March 2nd. May 2nd.
Oh,
right?
Yeah. March is come and gone.
After the draft. Yeah.
Absolutely. I got my studious glasses on, but I'm not very studious today. There you go. But anyway, I do not think they pick up his 5th-year option. It's just too much money. But I do think there's a chance, much like Jordan Love 1 year ago, you could still negotiate a deal with the guy, and I'm not saying he's the long-term answer, but I think they would like to have him locked up for more than 1 year. But if not, if he's amazing, you could franchise him, you could extend him. They got tons of cap space. Wilson will be the starter, and I know Fields is fully aware of that. But I also think you're going to see him trot out there for a series or 2 a game and be hard to play against and mostly run the ball, but not always. And it's a really cool dynamic here is, I guess, even when Wilson was drafted in like pre-draft interview, or when Fields was drafted in pre-draft interviews, he said he used to study Wilson's game, like this is a guy he looked up to. And I mean, young man Wilson was a lot like Fields, took a lot of sacks, a lot of big plays, sometimes the best athlete on the field, great deep passer, not much over the middle, so I think the dynamic is pretty cool here,
Right. And the offense doesn't change except for maybe dialing up a few more quarterback runs with Justin Fields if he's in the game versus Russell Wilson. And probably a pretty good mentor for Justin Fields. And what's funny is I listened to your radio show, The Drive, in Pittsburgh,
nice.
Steelers.com. When this news came down, I happened to be somewhere driving, and I thought I'd dial it up because I wanted to hear on the fly what you were talking about. And I listened to you and Dale Lawley for probably a good half an hour of your show, and it was interesting that they It was interesting that they said right away, like they told everybody and told reporters that Russell Wilson's the starter. And Justin Fields is not. I thought there would be at least an opportunity for some competition, some level of competition. Even if you say, look, Russell Wilson's taking the first snap of training camp. That's totally fine. He's the veteran player. But just to say, nope, week one starter, we already know who that is. Russell Wilson hasn't been good in the NFL for Justin Fields' entire NFL career.
It's pretty much been 3 years. I mean, that last year in Seattle was not very good.
Right. The last good Russell Wilson was, he was an MVP candidate, excuse me, midway through the 2020 season, which was Fields' last year in college.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think it's super interesting that, yes, everyone around here is so excited. And frankly, I put my Steelers stamp of approval on both moves because they paid nothing for either, which is insane. I mean, they've like the cheapest quarterback room in the league now with 2 pedigree guys, and they got rid of all 3 guys from last year. That doesn't mean you could go into Buffalo and win in the wild card game, though, either. It's not all solved, folks. There's problems still.
I love your idea of doing a Jordan Love, like, okay, buy out the 5th-year option, give him, if this is a place that Justin Fields thought was a good spot for him, and Russell Wilson's not a long-term answer, most likely, although they could do it with him. Right. But if you could get Justin Fields on an acceptable backup dollar amount for a second year, just to see what you've got there and give yourself an extended look, and that would kind of indicate to Justin Fields, look, you might not start week one, but you could start this year. You could start week one next year and kick that career off and have some stability in a stable organization. So I would like that with Justin Fields, and obviously the Steelers don't have anybody under contract for next year either, right?
No, they don't.
I like the cost control, like what they got these guys for, potentially a 6th-round pick and $5 million.
Yeah, exactly. That's what they paid for both.
I mean, that's unbelievable value.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, and there's some dead money with the Pickett trade, but I mean, all in all, I mean, Trubisky was making like more than that himself. I mean, and so the value is unbelievable, and I think that's what it came down to. Is these are just too good of opportunities to pass up. Let's take 2 bites at the apple. They may even draft Spencer Rattler in the 3rd round. They have 2 third-round picks now too. I mean, like they could do something like that as well. But see how they fit in. We could talk contract with them throughout the year, either, both, neither, And I know that they were very high on Fields when he came out. And this is just something I know from the organization. I mean, Columbus is only like 2 hours down the road. They have unbelievable Ohio State connections, and they always have. I mean, Dick LeBeau was an Ohio State legend when he played there 85 years ago, and they've had connections ever since, So they know all about the kid, and people love him as a person, as a worker, etc. So we'll see.
We're going to talk about some other reclamation quarterbacks, recently drafted guys. That 2021 and 2022 class is unbelievable how quickly some of those quarterbacks have fallen out of favor in the NFL, and which quarterbacks we think could reclaim their careers, because it feels like, Matt, one of those guys is going to be good somewhere, right? And who is it? I don't know. Might be Justin Fields with the Steelers. He's certainly talented enough. We've seen some of those guys, and we'll talk about all of them playing, well for a certain amount of stretches, is certain parts of their, young careers. And look, we're talking about guys at this point in Jordan Love's career. You bring up Jordan Love, he hadn't played yet, and these guys
exactly total unknown.
Guys giving up on him.
Yep. No, I think the Love comparisons, apples to oranges in a way, because we've seen a lot of Fields and with different coordinators and bad environments and okay environments. But Love at this point, how do you know if you pick up his 5th year or not? So, hey, there's ways around the 5th year situation.
Desmond Ridder, one of those quarterbacks that is already somewhere else, and he is the backup quarterback to Kyler Murray now with the Arizona Cardinals after a swap for wide receiver Rondale Moore, like what the Atlanta Falcons are doing this offseason, putting together a basketball team at wide receiver and pass catchers. But here's an interesting comparison because of the guy who's coaching Justin Fields now, offensive coordinator Arthur Smith. He was the head coach and coached Desmond Ridder last year in Atlanta. 10.3% of Justin Fields' dropbacks last season were from pistol. Just one pistol dropback in his first 2 years in the NFL for Justin Fields. So he went from one pistol dropback in 2 seasons to playing into his strength. And he was 10% of his snaps were pistol formation, which is a good quarterback running, but you can still throw the football.
Split the difference. Yeah.
Right. In pistol formation last year, 10.6 yards per attempt, 10.3 average depth of target, and 81% adjusted percentage with 11% off target throws. Everything else non-pistol last year for Justin Fields drops from 10.6 to 6.5 yards per attempt, drops 2 yards in average depth of target, drops 8% in adjusted completion percentage, drops or goes up in 8% from 11% to 19% off target throws. So he did a lot better in that pistol formation. Why do I bring up pistol formation? Well, and this is from @FootballInsights on Twitter. Desmond Ridder led the NFL in pistol dropbacks last year under Arthur Smith. And you can see how Arthur Smith's offense with Justin Fields, the way he might be able to use him, what he's done in the past with some, athletic quarterbacks, but still in the pocket, still throwing the football. I just love the fit. And it's amazing how similar Russell Wilson and Justin Fields are with, kind of too many sacks per drop back, right?
Oh, it's awful.
And you mentioned it, good throwing the ball down the field and have great deep ball accuracy, but the middle of the field and the timing is where they both struggle. So it'll be interesting. And I love the fit in Pittsburgh. And I think it's still a little crazy to say, another thing I heard from your show, Russell Wilson's already talked to everybody on the phone. We know how Russell Wilson.
Oh, he went to dinner with Cam Hayward and Watt and
right. And he's already even talked to Justin Fields. So it seems like they might have a good rapport together. And I understand all of that. And it's hard to be like, okay, this guy's already jumped into the role of CEO and is playing the part. But next, Matt, I'm going to ask you a question about, and I'll let you think about it for a second. Week 10, who's the starting quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers? And let's talk about Howell, Mac Jones, Kenny Pickett, a lot of the other Reclamation project quarterbacks around the NFL. Drew Lock, is he a Reclamation for the New York Giants? An interesting nugget there as well. Next. The next segment on Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by Robinhood. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood is the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right. No cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer good through April 30. Get started at Robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal information, claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% match on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial, LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. We'll move on from the Justin Fields to Pittsburgh thing. How do you see this going down? I know there's the 51% with 4th round pick versus 6th round pick. That's not going to be an indicator, in my opinion, for a team to say, well, we're not going to start the best quarterback for half the year because we don't want it to be a future 4th round pick. If Fields is, if they view Fields as a dude, he'll play. I'm still, like I said, a little bit surprised they're just so, nope, you're starter, you're backup, period. I'm a little surprised by that, even if, he takes the first snaps. But do you think it ends that way, Matt? Week 10, this is beyond the 51% thing, too, if that's a factor. Week 10, who's starting quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers?
I'll get that in 2 seconds. So, a couple things. Kenny Pickett has appeared in 25 football games in his life in the NFL. He's thrown 13 touchdown passes. I mean, that's an ungodly low number. I think Josh Rosen's like the only one in history with a worse attempt to touchdown ratio, and they're like neck and neck. I mean, for example, Russell Wilson was benched the last 2 games and threw double that. Last year, he threw 26. So I've been warning Steeler fans. Well, and along those lines, Kenny took care of the football really, really well. And I'm sure that was mandated from the top. When in doubt, check it down, throw it away. because when the Steelers didn't turn the ball over, they almost always win. When they do turn the ball over, even like one turnover, they're at like 30% winning percentage. You know, I mean, it's very obvious how they win football games. Now, I've been telling people these guys are going to make way more big plays than you're used to the last couple of years, including end of career Ben, but they are going to make a lot more negative plays too. Sacks, fumbles, interceptions, especially from Fields, so this is going to be much different.
Turnovers is a bad one for Fields because of the fumbles as well as a runner. And he's got that hero ball mentality, and Russell Wilson does as well. But that's certainly one thing he needs to dial back.
Yeah, there are going to be more negative plays. There'll be more positives. They're both great deep ball throwers. Pickens is going to catch more 70-yarders than he used to. So I could see the fan base that's so excited right now by week 10, to your example, like, we can't live this way. We got to put another quarterback in, put the backup in. What's going on here? This team was supposed to be great. They're 4-6, and
lean
what's
into
going
the
on?
Ground game at least. If
that's going to happen.
Not lighting it up. It's like, well, Fields isn't that different of a passer from Russell Wilson anyway. Let's lean into the ground game and get an advantage somewhere. And that's how I view this thing as well, with more upside, with one guy ascending in his career, albeit too slowly, and one guy declining in his career. And I mean, if you're looking at touchdowns, Justin Fields has more rushing touchdowns in his career than Kenny Pickett has passing touchdowns in the last year, right?
These guys produce touchdowns. That's something the quarterback position hasn't done here in a long time. But I could see the mentality, and I think this is where you're going with this, is if Wilson looks like, especially his first year with Denver, how could it be any worse? Just run the ball 80% of the time with a running quarterback and play good defense, So
play action and chuck a few up to George Pickens occasionally when you get that defense to creep up. By the way, underrated aspect of this, Justin Fields gets to throw to George Pickens, which should have been happening at the University of Georgia for a couple of seasons, but Fields transferred away from Georgia to Ohio State, and he never got to have that connection. How fun would that have been in college with the way those two guys throw with the way Fields throws the football and young George Pickens' ability that from the moment he stepped on the field at Georgia as a freshman. So we get to see that connection now.
Yep. I'm still going to say Wilson for your Week 10 conversation, though. I mean, he could be terrible. Of course, he could get hurt. I mean, quarterbacks get hurt left and right. But I would say it's a pretty loyal, stable organization. They're not real willy-nilly with just yanking people. You know what I mean?
Right. And Russell Wilson doesn't get hurt either. First of all, just to start week 1 as a 3rd round pick is pretty phenomenal, right? So he started from week 1 of his NFL career, didn't miss a single start for 9 years. Then
I didn't realize that. I knew it was strong, but wow.
Then missed a couple of games here and there. Last year, it wasn't injury. It was, something else altogether was the reason he wasn't on the field, right? At the end of the year. So he's never missed more than 2 games in a season. So there you go. If Fields is waiting for an injury to Russell Wilson, this is football and guys can get hurt at any time, but he's not been an injury prone quarterback at all.
Which is pretty much what we just said about Aaron Rodgers when the Jets traded for him too. So who knows? But
you're in your 30s, you pop an Achilles tomorrow.
Right, the first series of the game or whatever. I think he's off the ticket too, by the way, right? Isn't AR no longer
Aaron Rodgers,
VP?
We'll get a little bit of that. There's more moves coming, and there's certainly retooling around him, but not vice president candidate this year, thankfully for the New York Jets. Kenny Pickett was in no position, Matt, to be demanding things. And I was surprised to hear the reports that he was like, oh no, I'm not going to be back up and compete with Russell Wilson for a job. I'm not going to be emergency quarterback last year. I'm a little surprised by that because Pickett was the guy that the Steelers, more than anything, believed in the young man because they knew him so well from the Pittsburgh connection. Mm-hmm. And it turns out that maybe they didn't even like the young man after all. And then the quarterback play wasn't up to snuff.
Yeah. I mean, who's telling the media these things, is something we have to always be accounted for. But it does seem like it seems like a very un-Pickett-like thing from what I understand. But going back to the end of last year, and I'll be honest, I know he and others, Deontay, Chukwuekorfor, were very, very frustrated with Matt Canada. Looked at this offense and thought, this is the worst scheme in the league. We are not giving ourselves a chance to win. And I think that's a reason why some of them are gone. And I think some guys will come out in the next year or so saying, boy, that offense can't be NFL worthy. I'm not defending Pickett, but I do think I mean, apparently a really good source has said the day that they signed Wilson, Pickett canceled a throwing session with all the receivers, and then he was gone like the next day or whatever. You know, like, you got to go.
Drew Lock, Sam Howell, Desmond Ridder, Zach Wilson, Mac Jones, more quarterback reclamation projects. And we mentioned the Jets. They might be bringing in a wide receiver to go with their quarterback in Aaron Rodgers, who was not a vice president candidate next. This episode of Locked On, on the Locked On Podcast Network, Peacock and Williamson. This is not Locked On 49ers. That is coming up, though, today. So make sure you're subscribed everywhere. Your team is covered right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. But we're talking game time. You shouldn't have to worry when it's time to buy tickets for your next big event. Should be an exciting time. You should be snapping up those tickets and ready to go, even if they're last-minute tickets. And Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. You see the view from your seat, so you know what to expect when you get to your event. All-in prices, you get the total upfront, so you know you're getting a great deal before you check out. And those last-minute deals. Get tickets right up to the start of the event, even an hour after the event starts. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. This one shocked me. So if Justin Fields in Pittsburgh is immediately the backup quarterback, how do we get a quote like this from Seahawks GM John Schneider, who was on Seattle radio and said they wanted to keep free agent quarterback Drew Lock in Seattle, but the New York Giants, quote, basically sold him on the opportunity to compete to be the starter in New York. So how about Drew Lock competing with Daniel Jones to be starting quarterback? And is there a worse quarterback situation in the league if your starting quarterback, your incumbent, is now competing with Drew Lock, and you let all these other quarterbacks go for basically free that I would much rather have competing for a starting job than Drew Lock?
Yeah, it's odd. Now, trying to unpack it, I think there's two ways of looking at this. Is first off, one, they hate Daniel Jones. Like, it might just be that simple. Like, this was the worst signing ever. We don't like this guy. We can't wait to move on from him. If somebody would give us a third-round pick, they could have him. Get him out of here. We can't stand Daniel Jones. Or maybe Drew Lock's a little better, or at least thought of a little better than we think. I mean, the Russell Wilson trade, they insisted Drew Lock come back. And Pete Carroll, who knows a thing or two, enters that season saying, "No, we're good. We got Geno and Lock." And I thought that was insanity. I thought that was like the definition of tanking at the time. And they've only said good things about Drew Lock since. I mean, he got beat out to Geno. I mean, I'm not saying he's Dan Marino, but maybe he's okay. I don't know,
I see it two ways. One, this is like recruiting, where you try to get the best players you can. Mm-hmm. And then, sorry. Guess what? You're going to switch positions now. I know we said all this stuff to you in recruiting as a quarterback, but guess what? Now you're fielding punts in practice as a freshman, right? And so
these high school, college quarterbacks, we call them athletes, and then we give them a chance to compete at quarterback, but not for long.
Not really. You're just trying to get those kids in. Then, now I'm going to take a head coaching job somewhere else. So sorry, you're stuck here.
There's that too.
The other thing is, like Drew Lock in Seattle, I think this is the opposite of hating Daniel Jones. This is a guy who's going to compete, but going to lose the competition. Quarterback, and build the confidence in the organization and fan base, and everybody's like, "Oh, look, we had a competition, and Daniel Jones won. He won the competition." So I think that's more of what it is. It's not a true player who's going to actually be a threat to Daniel Jones. And I think that's what they wanted, but they can sell it a certain way.
Yeah. There's a lot of wording and phrasing and things of that nature there going on.
Mac Jones for a sixth. Desmond Ridder. I mean, I think that one makes the most sense. True backup there. But how about the Commanders swapping with the Seattle Seahawks, and Sam Howell now is the guy behind behind Geno Smith in Seattle. That was another spot I thought would have been a really nice fit for Justin Fields. If we're guessing here on what those teams were that were interested, I'm sure Seattle and Philadelphia were a couple of those teams for those Justin Fields services. And it turns out that the Seahawks receive Howell, a 4th-round pick, and a 6th, and the Commanders get a 3rd-round pick and a 5th-round pick. So just a little pick swap moving up were the Commanders from a couple of picks in the draft to send Sam Howell to the Seattle Seahawks. If you were looking at all these quarterbacks, Trey Lance is still in Dallas. Do you have a sense? Like, I feel like one of these guys, and it took how long? How many years did it take for Geno Smith to get where he was? Was it 8-9 years in the league, right?
He was drafted with Andrew Luck.
Right. And so do you get a sense that you like any of these young quarterbacks for these reclamations to come to fruition? And, maybe Sam Howell's the starting quarterback for Seattle and playing well next year, Justin Fields in Pittsburgh, or maybe even Mac Jones, or maybe one of these guys plays so well in spot duty that he earns a job somewhere else.
See, I'm maybe not the right person to ask because I'm still holding out hope for Jameis Winston, and I was in favor of the Steelers getting Trubisky or Mariota or Winston that year. I mean, these early picks, I always think Sam Darnold, I'm still on board. Hey, I'm not flushing Darnold yet either.
Carson Wentz.
Yeah, I probably finally flushed him, but a year ago I was cool with Wentz too. So sometimes if you just don't have it, you don't have it. But one thing I did want to discuss along those lines is those 5 quarterback moves. I deeply believe that the teams that bought the quarterbacks got more than they paid for. I mean, those are young dudes that have played, that have rare experience for their age. Some have 2 years left on their deal. Some have just 1. But I also think there's a dynamic at play here that people forget that this is not fantasy football, that Desmond Ridder, Howell, Mack, all of them really were the man in their locker room. They were the guy on the billboard, and somebody is coming in to replace them, whether it's Kirk Cousins, the 1st overall pick, the 2nd overall pick, the 3rd overall pick. And all of a sudden, the reporters, the media, your teammates don't look at you the same way. It's probably better for everyone to move for that player to leave.
Okay, let folks forget about him almost for a while.
Yeah, right.
When they show up in a preseason game, you're like, oh, look at that.
Yeah,
that guy? And that was a nice throw, and maybe something.
I think they all last in the league for a while and retire as multi-millionaires.
Right.
Ridder would be the one I want least.
Yeah, I could see that. So I think nice moves for the most part. New York Giants aside, nice moves for those teams that brought in guys that I think still have some talent. And the story's not done for them. And one of them is going to make good somewhere, I have a feeling. And the other point of it all is we're still, like we do every year, we got amnesia when it comes to the draft. Oh, we got 4 first-round quarterbacks. They might go 1, 2, 3, 4. And, of course, they're going to be franchise quarterbacks.
Yeah. And Nix and Pickett are great, too. And same with Rattler. And I think that's part of what hurt all these moves, too, is people are excited about this draft and want to go dip their toe in door number 2, So those 5 quarterbacks we mentioned that moved, I bet they start 15 games between them this year. I mean, injuries or, that's how the league is.
66 quarterbacks started games last year in the NFL.
I know it was 69 the year before, and it was slightly under last year. I don't know the exact number, but pretty darn close. Chances are those guys are going to play a lot.
Yeah, and a lot of them went to better situations, which is why smart organizations make smart moves, and bad organizations have bad rosters and ruin quarterbacks. And so we'll probably see that again with one of these quarterbacks that's drafting high in the 2024 draft. So don't forget that. The New York Jets retooling again around Aaron Rodgers. This might all blow up at some point, whether it's good or bad for one more year under Aaron Rodgers. And you hope that he comes back from that Achilles injury and is still that Hall of Fame guy. So it would be fun in New York. Tyron Smith added at tackle. And now Odell Beckham is potentially on his way out and has already said goodbye to the Baltimore Ravens. Mike Williams making a tour as well, who's recently released. So a couple big name wide receivers on the market. One might end up in New York. The other might end up in Pittsburgh, man.
Yeah. It sounds like Mike Williams is going from Carolina to the Jets to the Steelers over the next 24 hours. I'm sure all those teams want a medical check on him. I mean, player visits have kind of become a thing of the past, but if it's a medical, they want to do it. Odell's been linked to the Jets heavily as well. That seems like more of an Aaron Rodgers Jets type of move. You mentioned Tyron Smith. I mean, that's another Hall of Fame type guy. Morgan Moses, they traded for at right tackle. Could they still go tackle at 10, I think they pick, or is that a Brock Bowers landing spot now or something like that? So that's interesting to me. But they're accumulating older, huge name players for Rodgers, as they kind of always have since he's been a Jet. Are these guys going to be Dalvin Cook, or are they going to be the players they were a couple years ago?
Yeah, that pick 10 to the Jets has been an offensive tackle in every single mock draft.
Yep.
And now after free agency, we might see some changes in some of these. We've already got a big trade in the draft with the Vikings moving up, adding an extra first-round pick. We were pretty sure of what the reason of that is. And so it's a perfect time to tease tomorrow's episode where we get Matt Williamson's 2024 NFL Mock Draft 3.0. How have things changed in free agency? Matt's mock coming up tomorrow. And then we've got our weekly mailbag. So get those questions in at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL, or drop a question in the YouTube comments. Matt and I back tomorrow. It's mock draft time right here. Peacock and Williamson.